I've come this morning to take my walk in Macqueripe. I'm not walking on the beach, although later I'll walk down to the beach um, just to show it to you. But instead, I'm taking my walk along what used to be called the Macqueripe Mail Road. I had mentioned that name in a previous video, and I'll come back to the name a little later on as I go along on the walk. But Macqueripe is a area with indeed a lot of history. Plenty history in this area. You may wonder, where did this name Macqueripe come from? And from what I've gathered, it's an Amerindian name. Although I don't know what it actually means. You know, sometimes you can, or you've learned that this is an Amerindian name and it means area of palms or place without water or place with a lot of water and so forth. But what actually is the meaning of the name Macqueripe? Unfortunately, I don't know. All I can tell you is that it is an Amerindian name. And records indicate that there was some type of Amerindian settlement here just above the bay. When the Spanish came to Trinidad, they established an outpost here above Macqueripe. Some people say that there was a fort, although I've never seen the remains of such a fort. But it is believed that there was an outpost somewhere that the Spanish posted troops for them to look and see who might have been trying to come into Trinidad through the Bocas. So there was a Spanish, shall we say, lookout point here just above Macqueripe. Now, as to why they called here the Macqueripe Mail Road. Well, in Spanish times, the way that people in Trinidad communicated with the outside world was by means of the mail. And the mail was brought in by sailing ships to get to Port of Spain or even to St. Joseph, which would have been the capital at the time. Those ships had to come in through the Bocas. And many captains were afraid of trying to sail in through the Bocas. The reason being that in the rainy season, when not just Trinidad, but much of South America has their rainy season, the Orinoco River and all its tributaries are in full flood. And that flood of water gushes into the Gulf of Paria. And then out of the Gulf of Paria through the Bocas. In fact, I believe Columbus is reported to have said that the Gulf of Paria was like a river of fresh water. And if you're traveling by boat to Tobago, particularly during the rainy season, you can actually see that water. There's a difference in the coloration of the water between the actual seawater and that outpouring of water from the Orinoco that is coming through the Gulf of Paria and out through the Bocas. And remember, in those days, it would have been sailing ships. And so the sailing ships would have been trying to travel against the flow of water, this great outpouring of water that was pouring out of the Gulf of Paria through the Bocas. And when they get in, let me say, in the middle of the Bocas, very often the wind would die, blocked by the northern range on one side and blocked by the islands, primarily Monas. And so they were faced with battling against water and a lack of wind. So a lot of the sailing ships would refuse to try to sail through the Bocas. 1 minute as I walk past.
All right, then, okay, thanks. Thanks a million, yeah. I will tell you about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I was saying, so these sailing ships would not want to sail through the Bocas. And instead, what they began to do is that they would deliver the mail, they'd sail into Macqueripe Bay and deliver the mail there. And then the mail would be taken by horseback to Port of Spain and to St. Joseph. And this particular road then therefore began to be called the Macqueripe Mail Road. Let me swing around and show you. So yeah, this would have been the Macqueripe Mail Road. A little further down, you see those cars in the distance is the entrance to what is known as the Bamboo Cathedral. And one of the days on one of my walks, I'll come and go there instead. Interestingly, if you want to park in the car park above the bay at Macqueripe, there's a $20 fee. Although, after my walk this morning, after I cool down, I'm going to go to the Chaguaramas Development Authority and apply for a pass. They have a senior citizens pass if you're over 65. And with that pass, you're allowed to park in Macqueripe in the car park for free. So after the walk and after I cool down, I'm going to go and apply for the pass. So yeah, I was talking about in Spanish times. And in Spanish times, the area in Macqueripe had a number of estates growing cocoa and some amount of sugar and cotton. But it was with the British conquest of Trinidad in 1797 that there became more, well, let's call it development, in Chaguaramas as a whole, and in this area, which was known as the La Cuesa Valley at that time. The British also placed an outpost over Macqueripe Bay for the same purpose as the Spanish, to keep an eye out for people or boats that might be sailing into Trinidad. Because in those days, everybody was at war with everybody else. The English fighting the French, the English fighting the Spanish, the French and Spanish fighting each other, the Spanish fighting the Dutch. They're all these Europeans, always at war with one another. So the English also had an outpost there up above Macqueripe. As we move forward in time, one of the significant things that happened in Macqueripe happened around, I think it would have been 1914 or 1915. When, no, actually, I think I'm wrong on the year. And before I come to that, let me deal with 1914. 1914 was the time of World War I. And in World War I, the British definitely had their outposts up above Macqueripe. They were looking for enemy ships coming into Trinidad, primarily the Germans at that time. And there's an interesting tale recounted by Father Anthony de Vertile in his book. I'm trying to remember if it was the one, the Western Isles or the Great Estates of Trinidad. One of the two books, he recounts this tale. And he says that on one night, one of the soldiers who was down on the beach ran back up the hill telling the others, get on the telephone, call Port of Spain. Germans are coming, Germans are coming. That he had seen something which he suspected was maybe a German submarine coming up into the bay. When the others went to look, it turned out to be a leatherback turtle coming into nest. And I think that was the only attempt at somebody coming into land or something coming into land during the World War I period. So yes, I was saying though that in the 1930s, something significant happened here at Macqueripe. George Huggins bought what was at the time, or would have been called, I think it was called Macqueripe Estate. And he constructed a hotel right on the point overlooking the bay. Later when I reach back up to that area, I will go and show you the area where the hotel used to be. But this hotel was a 40-room hotel, 40 rooms with tennis courts, a billiards room. He had changing rooms for people to change into their bathing costume to go and bathe, and showers for when they came back afterwards. They also had horses that you could rent and ride through the area. I think the estate was 6,000 acres, so there was space for riding. And people would come and spend whether a week or a weekend, or some would only come for the day. And they had what at the time or rather what nowadays we would call a day pass, where you came and were allowed the use of the facilities for the day. What was also interesting is that in those days, there were cruise ships, not of the size that we know today, but nonetheless, there were cruise ships. I think one of the liners at the time was called the Hamburg Line, and they sailed to the West Indies. People would take a holiday on a cruise. And when they arrived in Port of Spain, they would be taken and brought to the hotel to enjoy the waters of the bay, and afterwards to be entertained by whatever orchestra, by whatever orchestra was playing at the hotel. So if we think that cruise ships visiting Trinidad are a new phenomenon, no, that was happening back in the 1930s. I've turned wrong, because my objective, while I enjoy making the video for you, my objective is to get the exercise. So I've turned wrong, and I'm heading back towards Macqueripe Bay. And when I get up there, I'm going to make a loop through an area up at the top with housing, and I'll explain about that housing. So I'm coming back in a while to you when I get up to the top. And incidentally, if you like this video, please hit the like button and share the video. Okay, I've reached a bit closer back to the bay and swinging up off of a little side road. So I was saying that in the 1930s, George Huggins had built a hotel overlooking Macqueripe Bay, and it was doing very well. Then came World War II, and the Lend-Lease agreement and Chaguaramas Peninsula being turned over to the Americans. And everybody in Chaguaramas, including Mr. Huggins' hotel and his staff, had to leave Macqueripe. It's said that Huggins received compensation of $100,000 for his hotel and estate, which he did not agree to, and fought the government at the time that the compensation was inadequate. According to Father Anthony de Vertile, eventually an out-of-court settlement was reached, and Huggins got $1 million for the estate and hotel. 1 million. That would have been huge, a huge sum back in 1930. Still a large amount of money even today. Though if the hotel was existing today, there's no way it would sell for $1 million. So the Americans took over the whole of Chaguaramas, and the hotel they converted into the officers club. And so they had an area for their officers to come and relax and enjoy themselves and to bathe. And they also built housing, I believe would be for the officers up in this area where I'm walking past now. And these are houses that would have been built by the Americans in World War II. When Chaguaramas was returned to Trinidad, a number of these houses were then occupied by officers of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. This one, and certainly this one, well, they've taken the original house and clearly upgraded it. Definitely upgraded the house. The renovations and upgrades. This one here in the bush is more like what the original house would have been like. Well, I continue on. Well, you may ask, what happened to the hotel? Well, it was there when the Americans handed back Chaguaramas Peninsula to Trinidad. But in 1987, the hotel was destroyed, dismantled. In fact, I believe it was said that it was blown up with dynamite. This house is completely hidden by the bush. I don't know why. I must check one day and find out. I believe that some of these, particularly these that look upgraded, may have been sold to officers, or at least the former officers who have upgraded it. It's not a bad area to live. A little lonely if you like a lot of neighbors, but certainly peaceful and quiet, surrounded by nature. So yes, it's said that the hotel structure was blown up using dynamite, blown up by the Defense Force, because the building had essentially been abandoned and it was being taken over by vagrants, and they wanted to prevent that. Obviously, they didn't have the foresight to consider creating or reviving the hotel back in 1987. They clearly didn't have that foresight. It's a bit unfortunate, but that's what happened. Now, there's some people who, yeah, boy, nice and cool in here, boy. The bushes on either side. There's some people who say that during World War II, Macqueripe Bay was where the US brought in their submarines. I don't know. People seem to love this idea of the bays in Chaguaramas being used by submarines. I find it a little hard to believe, simply because the hotel that had been converted into the officer club was where the officers went to relax, and certainly they and the other American servicemen all used Macqueripe Bay for bathing. It's hard for me to conceive that they would be bringing submarines into the very area where they, their wives, and possibly children, not sure if they were children, but certainly they and their wives would have been bathing. Find that hard to imagine. So although Macqueripe Bay is very deep, it is a very deep bay, it's difficult for me to conceive that it was used for mooring a submarine. But there are people who say that it was and strongly believe that it was. I cannot find anything to disprove it, but at the same time, I can't find anything to prove it either. I kind of cut across some bush here, or some grass really, to get away from the fellas who are cutting the bush with their weed whackers. Alright, swinging back around. Yeah, back on the old road. There's in the bush another of the houses that would have been constructed by the Americans for their officers. One of the other things about Macqueripe Bay, back in the days when telegraph was the thing for communicating with the outside world, the telegraph cable that connected Trinidad to Grenada and then from Grenada up through the island chain, that telegraph cable was landed or brought into Trinidad here in Macqueripe Bay. Later on, in the internet age, one of the submarine fiber cables that connects Trinidad to the outside world via the internet was brought in, or has been landed here in Macqueripe Bay as well. Said I'll show you. I'm just trying to figure out, do I go up here? Well, let me go up here, or along this trail and go up to the top. Yeah, I'll go up here. So I've come up here because, folks, this is the point where the hotel was located. Can still see some of the, what I believe would be foundation, and this appears to be steps that would have led up to the hotel, or to part of the hotel. So this, if you're ever curious where that hotel from the 1930s was, this is where it was. 40 rooms, tennis courts, billiards room, horseback riding, swimming in the bay, freshwater showers. Zip line, I'll be honest, I don't know if the zip line is still operating. Well, I'm seeing the cable there. Haven't come here in a while, and so I don't know if they're still operating or not. But for those who like zip lining, well, you can come and do that and zip line across Macqueripe Bay. Let me see if I can see the bay from up here. Well, I'm gonna walk down. Well, you're just seeing the bay through the water. A lot of bamboo. Alright, let me cut off and go around and then walk down to the bay, show you the bay. For those who've never been to Macqueripe Beach, you need to know that the car park is up above, and then it's a downhill walk down to the beach. It's concrete with smooth section, as you're seeing, and then steps, and then other smooth sections. One of the things you need to be wary of, particularly when you're walking down, is that this walkway is often wet. Not necessarily because of rain, but because of the people who go bathe in the sea and then they walk back up to their car with their wet bar trunks, wet feet. And so the walkway is wet from the drippings from them. And if you're not careful, you could slip and fall. Even on a day like today, and you see how the sky is blue and there's no rain, but the walkway is wet. And you see me, at my age, I can't afford to slip and fall on concrete. Old bones don't heal that easily. So I don't want that to happen to me. So if you find it going down slow, that's the reason. Yes. Mm-hmm. Good day. Yeah, so I'm taking my time on this walk going down. There's the bay. Yeah. Going up will not be as bad, even though, yes, it's still going to be wet. Beautiful, isn't it? Macqueripe Bay is gorgeous. I really should have walked with my bar trunk and towel, but maybe later in the week after I get the old people's pass. That's the nice thing about being over 65. There are quite a few things that you can get for free. I hope all I have to do is show my driver's license or ID card. I hope they don't tell me that I have to go and bring proof of address and all of that. I don't know why I would need that for a pass. But I hope they don't tell me that. Yeah. Look how beautiful Macqueripe Bay is. And it's definitely a bay with a lot of history. See over there, folks? That ledge? No. That back in the 1930s, people who came and stayed at the hotel up above would use that very same ledge to go fishing. Those very same rocks out there. They'd go out there and go fishing. And according to what I've seen in history books, they were catching 300 100-pound groupers offer there. I haven't seen anybody in the, shall I call it, modern times when I've been here catching anything near that size. Yeah, I really should have walked with the bar trunk today. Oh, well, later in the week, maybe in about 2 days time or so, I'll come back around the same time. Don't like to come here very, very early in the morning because see all those trees, they block the sun. You come here 6:30, 7 o'clock, and then the water's dark. I prefer to bathe when the sun is shining on the water and you see all the way down. So I will come back at a later time. So that was my Macqueripe walk this morning, sharing a little of the history of the Macqueripe Bay. And by the way, if you were wondering whether there are fishing boats used here, not now, but back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, we're talking 1905, 1910, back in that time period. Yes, there were fishermen who would have their boats moored in the bay and come back in here, walk up the hill with their catch, and then walk to Chaguaramas to sell it. Nowadays, no fishermen use this bay. At least no fishermen with boats don't come and anchor their boats here. They may come in the bay for bait fish, but not to say that they have their boats anchored here. So, this was Macqueripe. If you like my videos, there are going to be 2 other videos appearing on your screen now. Select one of those videos so you can continue seeing some of my content. At the start of this video, I said that I did not know what the Amerindian word Macqueripe means. A viewer has suggested to me that it means monkeys in the palm, from the combination of the words macaque, which is monkey, and reap, which apparently is an Amerindian word for palms. If you've seen my golf course video, you will know that there are still a lot of monkeys in the Macqueripe area.